announced one of the largest extra-constitutional power grabs ever by a chief executive. He declared unilaterally that almost 5 million undocumented aliens will receive deferred action under some newfangled definition of prosecutorial discretion, Madam Speaker. Not only that, not only escaping consequences, he has decided to bestow benefits such as work authorization and immigration benefits. This, Madam Speaker, despite the fact that the very same president over 20 different times said he lacked the power to do what he just did. And he repeatedly said he's not a king. Now, Madam Speaker, his position may have changed after the election, I hasten to add, but the Constitution has not. That document is clear, time-tested, and true, and it says that this body passes laws, and it is the responsibility of the chief executive, Madam Speaker, to make sure that those laws are faithfully enforced. If this president's unilateral, extra-constitutional acts are not stopped, Madam Speaker, future presidents will no doubt expand that power of the executive branch and threaten the constitutional equilibrium. But Madam Speaker, this is not a fight between Republicans and Democrats. It's not even a fight.
And I ask the members to take their conversations off the floor. The gentleman will continue.
Thank you, Madam Speaker. I'll back up in case they missed it. This is not a fight between Republicans and Democrats. It's not even a fight over immigration reform. This is a fight over whether this branch of government will ever find the courage to stand up for itself. The same document that this and all president swears to defend gives this body certain tools like the power of the purse. And it's about damn time we use that tool. So I would ask you to oppose this motion to recommit, support the underlying bill, and I would yield back my time.
So I hope I do live long enough to hold a Republican president to the exact same standard that I'm holding this one. But for you to run to race as the explanation for why we hold the position that we do, Harry Reid had a very different perspective on recess appointments when there was a Texan in the White House, and none of us accused him of geographic discrimination. In fact, hell, for that matter, Senator Obama had a different perspective on executive overreach than President Obama, and nobody runs to race as an explanation for that. So I would just caution you to be careful when you try to import motives to people.
Do you think not being a politician is a defense? And is that your defense this morning? I mean, I know initially you said that you offered these comments at a conference. I think you meant conferences, plural, but you said conference when you went on a very obscure television show and initially apologized for what you said were inappropriate comments. And now today your defense is that you're not a politician. Is that the best you can come up with? Who in Libya were we to call? Who? Mr. Cummings' point is a wonderful point. It was so good the 1999 ARB made the recommendation. Make sure the host country is aware of its obligations. Who did we call in Libya?
Question, sir?
Yeah, when I pause, that's generally an indication I'm waiting on you to answer, but I'll make it more clear in the future. So you're a professor at MIT and you're worried about not looking smart enough?
Yes.
Well, you succeeded if that was your goal. You see a trend developing here, Professor Gruber?
I don't understand the question.
It's a lot of stupid quotes you've made. That's the trend. And what I'm struggling with is whether your apology is because you said it or because you meant it. If it's good enough for us to ask brand new citizens to affirm their devotion to the law, is it too much to ask that the president do the same? If a president
So give me all the evidence to back the vehicle backfiring narrative, because we already know all the evidence to support the shooting. Give me all the evidence that made your department so sure that it was a vehicle backfiring that you didn't even search the White House.
And while you are free to stand and clap when any president comes into this hallowed chamber and promises to do it with or without you, I will never stand and clap when any president, no matter whether he's your party or mine, promises to make us a constitutional anomaly and an afterthought. We make law.
So I was sitting there, Dr. Lurie, thinking, here we have a doctor with an incredible background in medicine who also happens to have planned for crises like Ebola, whose job description also includes communication strategy. So why in the hell did the president pick a lawyer to be the Ebola czar and not you? I mean, God forbid we pick somebody with a background in medicine instead of a dadgum lawyer.
This is just processing a crime scene, Director. This is not high math. It is processing a crime scene. You actually don't need 18 weeks of training to be able to do that. You just need to walk around. So why wasn't it done?
It is my understanding that a perimeter sweep was done. Was it as thorough as it needed to be?
Evidently not. Evidently not.
Gentleman's time is...
The next time there's an opening on the Supreme Court, I want you to see whether or not the president considers a doctor or a dentist for that job. And we actually are about to have a vacancy for our Attorney General. And I want you to consider or be mindful of whether or not he considers maybe like a tattoo artist to be our next Attorney General. I promise he will not. He will pick a lawyer for the Supreme Court, and he will pick a lawyer to be the head of the Attorney General of the Department of Justice. I'm just lost as to why he wouldn't pick somebody with a medical or health care background to be the Ebola czar.
I wish I saw the connection here, but that's...
I'll give you the connection. Lois Lerner just referred to conservatives as an obscene body part, and she said we were crazies and likened us to terrorists.
Well, Mr. Chairman, if...
You are not recognized. The gentleman from Georgia is not recognized.
Well, would the gentleman yield?
No, sir, I will not.
They actually, my understanding, like our criminal investigation...
You should go back. It might be the same people who gave you the understanding that you were confirmed that the tapes don't exist. So my advice is to be very careful who you take your advice from. And I'm going to say this in conclusion, Mr. Koskin, I really could not believe the colloquy that you had with one of our colleagues about the morale at the IRS. It takes a lot to stun me, but that stunned me. Here's a piece of advice I would give. If the folks like Lois Lerner and others would have spent more time working on the backlog, more time working on their caseload, and less time targeting groups, and less time trying to overturn Supreme Court decisions they didn't agree with, maybe morale would be better, and maybe their backlogs would be lessened.
Would the gentleman yield?
I'd be thrilled to.
The motion to recommit.
The reservation is withdrawn, and the gentleman is recognized for 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I want to talk for just a moment as colleagues, not as Republicans or Democrats, not as members of the majority or the minority, but colleagues who are blessed to serve in the United States House of Representatives, the People's House, with all the tradition, with all the history, with all the laws that have been passed, with all the lives that have been impacted. I want us to talk as colleagues, because our foundational document gave us, as the House, unique powers and responsibilities. We run every 2 years because they intended for us to be closest to the people. The president was given different duties and powers. The president was given the duty to take care that the laws be faithfully executed. So my question, Mr. Speaker, is what does that mean to you? That the laws be faithfully executed. We know the president can veto a bill for any reason or no reason. We know the president can refuse to defend the constitutionality of a statute, even one that he signs into law. We know the president can issue pardons for violations of the very laws that we pass. And we know that the president has prosecutorial discretion as evidenced and used through his U.S. attorneys. Mr. Speaker, that is a lot of power. What are we to do when that amount of power is not enough? What are we to do when this president or any president decides to selectively enforce a portion of a law and ignore other portions of that law? What do we do, Mr. Speaker, regardless of motivation, when a president nullifies our vote by failing to faithfully execute the law? How do we explain waivers and exemptions and delays in a bill passed by Congress and affirmed by the United States Supreme Court? How do we explain away a refusal to enforce mandatory minimums that were passed by Congress and affirmed by the Supreme Court? And why pursue, Mr. Speaker, immigration reform if presidents can turn off the very provisions that we passed? You know, in the oath that brand new citizens take, it contains 6 different references to the law. If it's good enough for us to ask brand new citizens to affirm their devotion to the law, is it too much to ask that the president do the same? If a president can change some laws, can he change all laws? Can he change election laws? Can he change discrimination laws? Are there any laws under your theory that he actually has to enforce? What is our recourse, Mr. Speaker? What is our remedy? Some would argue the framers gave us the power of the purse and the power of impeachment, but Mr. Speaker, those are punishments. Those are not remedies. What is the remedy if we want the executive to enforce our work? This bill simply gives us standing when our votes are nullified. This bill allows us to petition the judicial branch for an order requiring the executive branch to faithfully execute the law. Mr. Speaker, we are not held in high public esteem right now. Maybe members of Congress would be respected more if we respected ourselves enough to require that when we pass something, it be treated as law. Maybe we would be more respected if we had a firmly rooted expectation that when we pass something as law, it be treated as law. Maybe we would be more respected if we put down party labels and a desire to keep or retain or acquire gavels and picked up the history, the tradition, and the honor of this, the people's house. Mr. Speaker, the House of Representatives does not exist to pass suggestions. We do not exist to pass ideas. We make law. And while you are free to stand and clap when any president comes into this hallowed chamber and promises to do it with or without you, I will never stand and clap when any president, no matter whether he's your party or mine, promises to make us a constitutional anomaly and an afterthought. We make law.
Expired.